So then we get the context of use, which is what's happening. When is it happening? Where is it happening? How is it happening? And why is it happening? This is the bulk of what I do by far, because it goes a long way in illuminating what's happening for people. And a lot of times it illuminates things that people didn't know were occurring, which is valuable in its own way. So the first question I always ask is, how do people use this now? And you'll notice I'm talking to business folks, talking to stakeholders in the room. These aren't interviews with users, although the same process kind of does hold water. I want to walk through key or common use scenarios, common task flows, core stuff that people do every single day. What is it? That's whiteboard stuff. It's boxes and arrows. When, where, and how do bad things happen? That's the purpose of those scenarios, to identify what's happening where. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but you'll see examples of that. Which of the 4 Ps are contributing here to this, to those bad things? Where's the problem coming from? Is the call coming from inside the house, so to speak, for those of you that know that movie reference? Or is it an external force of some kind? Do we know why those things are happening? If we don't, guess what we're doing? We're finding out. If we do know why that stuff is happening, the next question is, okay, great. Do we have evidence of that? Just like before. If we don't have evidence, we go get some, or at least confirm that there isn't any to be had. Is that evidence conclusive? If no, once again, we research. If it is, we're going to iterate on improvement. We're going to design and build. Now, this is where I'm knee deep into, let's start iterating solutions on this together. And again, that's the part where I want all these people in the room, developers especially, so that we can start proving stuff out. There's one client I have where the lead developer always joins us. He literally sits there and codes while we're talking. He builds out low fidelity, I mean, really extremely low fidelity prototypes of the functionality that we're talking about, that we're discussing, trying to figure out whether, what's the right way to do this. And he'll prove it out right then and there. And he'll constantly say, well, I just worked something up, take a look. And he'll show it to us. And we're like, maybe, don't love it. But it's enough to move the conversation to, okay, is this worth another half hour of our time? Or should we table it and move on? You start to get quick answers. Or if he says, I've been screwing around with this for the last 30 minutes, you guys have been talking about it, I don't think we can do this way. Again, I want to know that so that we don't waste another hour, day, week, month.
Got a quick question about discovery. So when I talk to folks about, what are the issues, what do you need, and things like that, typically I get back a solution. Here's what we need to do,
Of course.
Fix it. And so it's always kind of from the perspective of the end product. This is what's going to fix our issues. How do you get back to the actual requirements? I mean, the stuff that's motivating that solution.
By doing this. I don't ever do that. I don't ever ask that question out of context where I'm not in a room. I've already called a meeting. I've already got people sitting in the room, right? And the purpose, and I've already said the purpose of the session is we're going to walk through a lot of stuff. And I always preface it with, you're going to hear some things that you may feel like you already have the answers to. That's okay. You may have them. I don't. There are a lot of people in this room who don't. So even if you think you know what we're supposed to be doing here, that's okay. But we're going to step through it anyway, because there are a lot of folks here who need to understand it the way you understand it. Now, in my head, I know damn well that any preconceived solution somebody has is usually wrong, mine included.
Yeah.
Right? You know that. But I force people to walk through the exercise anyway. So like when you start, right, you're like, okay, how do people use this? Someone inevitably will say, well, we know how this works. Like, why are we doing this? And I just gently push back. Like, I understand that, but I need to walk through it. If I'm going to be of use to you, okay, if I'm going to be able to help you, I need to make sure that I'm not missing any part of this. The team sitting here needs to make sure that they're not missing any part of this. Because a lot of what happens is assumption. People assume that other people know things, and a lot of times they don't. That's been my experience. So these are the kinds of things that I say.
Okay, so you're basically refocusing on,
yes. Constantly.
Okay.
Constantly. You're constantly redirecting traffic. Always, okay? If it's 8 hours, I mean, I'm doing that probably every 15, 20 minutes. I mean, you all know how this goes. Everybody already knows everything about everything. They know what needs to be done. Like, you're just constantly herding the cats, pulling them back in. But what happens when I show them a framework like this and say, here's what we're going to do, here's the stuff we're going to step through, it has an interesting effect in that I go from being like the fluffy front end guy, that half these people are like, I don't even know why this guy's here. Like, I go from being that guy to someone who understands process, to someone who's like, oh, okay, so he is deeper than a puddle. I mean, seriously, it's important. People will pigeonhole you in your role. This is important. You have to, all of you, no matter what your job is, you have to show them that you're bigger than that you're more than that you're capable of more than that. And the artifacts you use and the tools you use to do it go a long way in communicating that. Make sense?
Yeah, it
I
does.
mean,
And there's this dichotomy between design and developers, but really that issue is the same for both.
It is. Absolutely. It is absolutely the same for both. The only dichotomy to me is in each's particular area of expertise. That's it. But we're solving the same problems. We're dealing with the same problems. We need to uncover the same stuff for the same reasons, because if we don't, it will come back and trip us up later. It's guaranteed. Guaranteed.
I was going to just piggyback a little on
Yeah, go ahead.
that idea of this, it's prescriptive, right? They always tell us, we need you to
Yes.
build us this or to design us that.
Yes.
And I just say, well, that might be the right thing, but let's back up a bit and what is the problem that we're trying to solve for? Because that's
Right.
usually how I will approach it.
Same thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you want? Forget about the solution for a second. What do you want to happen? That's the thing I pull people back to all the time. What do you want to occur when we're done today? When we walk out of this room today, what do you want to know? What do you want to feel good about? What do you want to be less worried about? At the end of 2 weeks, same questions. At the end of a month, same questions. What do you want to occur? Right. So you're absolutely right, David. It's the right question. So how I do this is like this. This is what I do on a whiteboard. Now, I've bastardized probably 4 different ways of doing flow diagrams. I don't care. It's my way. It's simple. Boxes are things sort of that we know. We've got directional arrows that show us a process. There are things that sometimes are circles that represent some process that happens. There are people that play parts along the way. If we've got documents that get shared, I try to represent those. So this is messy. It's just a big, messy thing. So if you start from the left where it says kickoff, this is a client walking me through a process. They're saying, well, first we have a kickoff and we do, A, B, C, D, and E. And then this happens. And there's agenda share with everybody. And then there's an invitation and vetting process for different faculty members. So when I got there, this is 3 boxes in, right? And I write faculty invitation vetting process. People are making faces. All right. And so I stop. I'm like, okay, tell me what the face is about. And people get embarrassed. They're like, I know I wasn't. It's okay. That's what we're here for. What goes wrong here? Right? What can go wrong here? So now 5 people say, well, this is a problem because there's always 5, 6, a dozen people outside this process that we need to talk to that may or may not be involved. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. We don't know if they're going to be involved until we actually can have a conversation with them, but it takes weeks to schedule a conversation with them to find out. Then we've got additional people in grant development and I can't even read my own writing, whatever the heck that second word is, commercial supporter maybe, who need to be involved. And there's a timeline on this because they have agendas and they have schedules and they can't quite commit time. So we're stuck. So I take an orange marker because I've been writing in black up to now. I take an orange marker and I circle that. Why? Because it's a problem. Anything that I circle in orange or red on the board is a problem area. Those are things we're going to come back to and say, okay, how do we mitigate this? And the other question you're going to hear is, how bad is this and how often does it happen? Because if it's really bad and it happens all the time, we're going to have to deal with it. So you'll see those throughout here. So now we have a coordinating planning call with faculty. And then there's an agenda that gets updated. And then there's an outline. And then there's all these other things that happen. And then there's a PowerPoint that gets built and it goes to faculty. And you see all this craziness up in the top right corner with grant developers and content. This is them telling me, sometimes over top of each other, what then there's this other person involved who does this, but then we also have to. Now this started out as a nice organized boxes and arrow exercise. And as you can see, it spun out of control really rapidly. We got as far as, if you look halfway down the right side, it says final to production. When we got there, somebody said, yeah, but wait a minute, what about the multimedia content people? And I was like, okay, we've been here for 3 days. The first I've heard of this. So then they show me this little circle in the center. And that's sort of a cyclical, iterative thing that happens. And then they say, oh yeah. And then after that, it actually has to go to editorial. So it's not really final. Let's go to editorial. And then it comes back to us. And then we keep doing this dance. So you see how nutty this is? Let me explain to you what this was part of. We had an initiative. I met with different departments. There were 5 different departments in play here. I met with them separately on 5 different days. And I asked every single department to walk me through this process. Because what had happened is they got all the way to an end of a year-long development project they get grant money for. Their mandate is to meet what the original specs are that were specified in the grant. They have to do that by the letter. They ran into multiple situations where what they built was not what was specified. Not only that, but nobody knew that they were missing, that they were not meeting specification by the time they got to the end. So nobody understands where this stuff's getting lost in translation. So I'm like, fine, I want to talk to all 5 departments, but I want to do it separately. So I have all 5 walk me through this. And I get 5 completely different processes. Not only that, but it becomes clear to me on day 2 that some of these folks are doing each other's work. And lots of people are not using the quote unquote project management system, which is really just a SharePoint repository where people just dump documents at will, multiple flavors of documents. So they're running over each other's toes. So the spec is changing based on what people are doing. There's no communication as to what got changed by who. Then some people are changing the work other people did. It's chaos. When I got them all in the room on day 6 and showed them, because I did this on huge paper, and then I put it up in the room and we had everybody come in the room, they were shocked, completely shocked. Nobody had any idea that this was going on in different places, none. So what I love about the whiteboard is it gets everybody to reality really quickly. People think their process is buttoned down. They think that what's going on is clear and it's obvious. To your question a minute ago, what do you do when they're like, we know what the solution is? This proves to them that they don't, because they can see how messy it is. They can see how chaotic it is. They can see how out of control it is. There's nothing that works better than this. I'm serious.